cello. Yeah, I love this.
Cello trumps everything.
I know, isn't that great? Gorgeous to see you. And hello, Suze. Hi, everybody. Hi. So we'll just go round the Zoom room at the moment, and in 2 minutes, I'm going to kick into a workshop with a slide deck. So, first of all, before we get into that space, let's just have a general quick check in, go around and say hi to each other, and maybe bring to the little check in moment what kind of challenges you're currently facing with your practice. And it could be an obvious thing like no time, which for me is definitely something I'm struggling with. So that's me. Hi, I'm Louise, and I struggle with finding the time, making the time to actually get to the instrument. Let's maybe go to Christina.
I'm Christina and I struggle with procrastination. So I really do have
Yes.
time, but I have an excuse. Maybe I should do 100 other things or look up that, before I play the piece of music, I go and research it.
So you go into rabbit holes.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Probably put the timer on. Just know if you're going into a rabbit hole, 2 minutes max, and then come out wherever you're at to start. Yeah, would be my little suggestion. Leonie, do you want to jump in? What's your current challenge with practice at the moment?
My current challenge is having more things to practice than I can get around.
So, yes, key prioritization. And I think very importantly with that is often with music, you might find there's a similarity across the overview. So, kind of not thinking you have to practice everything, but maybe finding one key objective per thing. And of course, with you, you do a lot of community orchestra work. So, you will have a variety of pieces, a very different level of programs happening all the time. And when we play in different groups, each group will bring more music to practice. And actually, this balancing act for a professional artist is very common. And it is normally the first thing in overwhelm for us. We just have too much to practice and not enough time. So I think finding key areas, and in a tutorial section, for example, with Australian Youth Orchestra, I would always go ahead with a tute, already knowing there's three key areas here. These are the three things I need to work on. I would never expect an Australian Youth Orchestra cello section to play every note with me in a tutorial. Tutorials are more about opening up, deepening a section, and taking that learning and putting it into other things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Karen Eastman, what would you like to add? What's your current challenge?
Sometimes I just go to bed and go, oh, I forgot to practice.
So maybe for you, it could be bundling cello practice with another habit. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes, yes, I do. I've read that book.
And I think that can sometimes really help very busy people. And just
Yeah.
know that even just a 5 minute window when you've got something on the
Yeah.
stove. And it could also be bundling a habit, glass of wine, quick get the cello out and do 5 minutes. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't forget to have my glass
Jennifer.
of wine every day.
So maybe you need to bundle it with that one.
There we go. You're onto it.
Okay, Chris Easton, a challenge for you at your current practice.
Well, much like Christina, it's the procrastination side of things.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, when I do practice, I feel much better having accomplished that. It's just actually
Doing
having a
it.
regular period of time through the week to do, I mean, not that I don't have plenty of time, I do. I have plenty of time.
Yeah.
It's just,
And ironically, the more time you have, the least you do, actually. I find
yes,
that
that's
in a
right.
practice block for me, the more things I have in a day, the more critical time is, and therefore I value it more, actually. So a trick for me is getting it done before everything else hits me. So my practice bundle habit would be pot of tea, straight into here, pajamas, and I do 20 minutes with my mute on. And that could be 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock. But you see, that routine was set up very early on in my childhood. I do a big chunk of practice before I start my working day. Because if I wait for my practice at nighttime, I'm too smashed. Like now, the last thing I want to do be getting the cello out. Whereas I do know some professional artists who practice really well, deep focus, and are totally night owls. Now, I've worked out my practice brain is best used when I'm fresh after a good night's sleep, And I would generally do that first thing. It also feels like, for me, like a little bit of exercise. So even though I'm sitting down, I'm kind of working through my body. And I think, working out for yourself, what's your time? When do you work best with your time zones? I'm an early bird. That's when I'm fresh. I can't do deep work thinking at nighttime. If I was going to practice at night, it would cram. I would feel stressed, and I'd probably do more detrimental damage to my psyche than I would do if I was doing it in the morning. So do you think you're a night owl or an early bird, Christine? No, I should say. Christine?
Me?
Yes.
I'm definitely a night owl.
So maybe you might need to practice that,
Yeah.
but being mindful that you're in a unit and not everyone wants to hear a cello played at 10 p.m.
Tough.
However, you could do at the beginning stages lots of little pizzicato things. You can kind of do your
Yeah,
theory.
yeah.
You could do things which get the hands on the instrument but not make a lot of noise.
Yes. Yep.
And last but not least, from looking at it, is Suze. Do you want to jump in? And everyone else who's spoken, we're just going to start to put you all onto mute, if you don't mind, so we don't get extraneous noises. And Suze, tell us, what is your challenge currently?
Well, my current challenge, I suppose, is probably two. One is just a sense of feeling overwhelmed and
Okay.
how to
What's that mean for you?
structure.
Can you deepen that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's picking too many songs, and I think really I just want to focus. I'm trying to do this, and I've been trying this over the last couple of weeks, to just really pick one song and to just practice, like relate my structure to open strings around that, do my arpeggios or my scales, and then to finish, with my music
Okay,
piece.
so a little bit like your pieces are your dessert.
Yes.
And what you've talked about is a very traditional way of setting up practice, which is you do your exercise, your drills, your kind of scales, your exercises, or your kind of studies in the first little chunk.
Yeah.
And then the studies help you start to extrapolate your technique. And then, of course, then you move that into the repertoire, right?
Yes.
But I think other ingredients can be added to this. I think we need to be creative and exploring. So, for example, be mindful if you're not very good at reading music yet, if that's a skill you're learning, sight reading is essential. And I think sight reading is a really nice, fresh way to check your skills, meaning I've not practiced this before. I'm just going to test if I can do instant recall. Can I play this music? Now, you have enough method books in this group to be able to find things at your current level or often a level lower and try and add in a fun moment of sight reading. Yeah, because actually that is the most important skill to me. It really helps us test the skills under pressure. So if you're not practicing sight reading, do so. Yeah, because it's going to really help you when you get into more a ensemble or a larger group like an orchestra.
Yeah.
And then another very important thing I think we could think about is checking in a little bit on spinning those things around. If you think about the ingredients of what you've just talked about, if you're always doing the same thing every day and expecting it to improve, it's not necessarily going to always improve in the same way. So we have to think a little bit about, could you, for example, start Tuesday with a piece and then reverse that method? You don't actually, there's no real evidence to suggest actually starting with a scale or an arpeggio is going to do any better for you than starting with a piece. It also depends on how you break that piece apart, because all music is made up of scales, arpeggios, and little mini studies. The other very common thing I see in beginners particularly is wanting to always start at the beginning of the piece. I would always suggest doing a chunk at the end and then adding a line or a section or a phrase. And then eventually when you've done that, you'll be able to play maybe a whole page of music. Depends on your level. And I think chunking is the most important skill I have. Something I do a lot with my students who get stuck in the beginning and perfecting things is I use the dice game. So talking about gamifying, I have a beautiful big couple of red dice, and they're really large and we can spin them. And then I've divided each piece into maybe 6 sections, or even it might be a 6 bar piece, depending on the level.
On the ground beside you.
And Leonie, I'm just going to get you to put your Leonie. Do you mind just putting your onto mute? Thank you, darling. And so
Great.
what I do is then I have that chance game of throwing that dice in and working out, can I just play section 3? But also you could use the dice game with your 6 elements, for example, of what you're practicing. So if you're someone who has an overwhelming number of pieces to learn, Leonie is an example. Say she's got 12 pieces, that would be fantastic because we've got obviously 2 die. And she has to practice number 10, yeah? Rather than having to think. So much brain juice is used in the first 2 minutes of, right, I've tuned, I've got ready, now what am I going to practice? Which is why I believe if you actually advance plan it, you have a kind of routine and a couple of different ways, different systems of using that, but also check in with yourself. It's never realistic to think you're going to be totally creative and artistic every single practice. Sometimes you just have to just grit and do it. And just know that maybe your brain's somewhere else, maybe your spirit is not engaged, but it's just good for the body to just get the work done. It's pure muscle memory at this point. I'm hoping that's helped a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into sharing my screen, and we're just going to do a little bit of work now. So what you're going to need to do is get maybe a writing tool, pencil would be great, call me old-fashioned, analog, and maybe a journal. And you're just going to do some kind of listening to what I'm doing, and then at the end of this session, we'll do a bit of a Q&A and we'll discuss as a group. Is that okay, everybody? Thumbs up if you're cool. Awesome. I'm going to start my sharing. And I'll take us into, so I'm on an iPad, moving. Okay. Alrighty, so let's design a personal practice plan. And this is really what it's all about. Now, I do practice plans every month. This is all blah, 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 blah. This is all, blah, 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 blah. But let's talk a little bit about the benefits, right? To me, it's all about clarity. So the busier I get, the more I really need to focus in on actually what do I want to actually do. But I find that most of us might stay in the planning section rather than the doing section. So we've actually got to move those planners amongst us, or procrastinators, into doing. And these are what I've discovered are the most important and top 5 challenges preventing effective practice. I believe a lot of it is structure. It's routine. And often it's mindless repetition without really understanding how to evaluate music. And all of those words I've been hearing actually, overwhelm. I find a lot of highly aspiring musicians hit burnout very early. And we're talking even 13-year-olds who are just totally uninspired. So you've got to find ways to keep yourself motivated and really curious about what you're doing. I think curiosity is the key. And of course, the more consistent you are, the easier it is to track something. And it's going to also give you all those dopamine hits to kind of give you more motivation. So I always do a SWOT analysis every 3 months, just like my business, but I do it for my practice. And I won't go through this because this could be something you could do in your own time. But just know that if I, as a professional musician, do this, a SWOT analysis, I think is very useful for your practice. I'm just going to talk about what's threatening my practice at the moment as a case study. It's time management for me. And number 2, it's fear. I often feel a huge amount of fear just before I do a public performance. Even though I've been a performing artist for a very long time, performance anxiety for me can really peak normally about a week before I have to do a show. And that's really eating my self-confidence at the moment. So I have to make myself do it and not feel the fear, but do it anyway. And I feel better once I've done it, but I'm obviously thinking about my show on Sunday. Now, let's talk a little bit about goals. This is another thing I do every 3 months. What do I want to achieve? Now, for me, I tend to work backwards, meaning I have a date in the diary. Normally it's an external date, for example, a concert. And I have to obviously learn music to get to that point. For a student, it might be a lesson. It could be by next lesson, I have 2 things I need to really master. There might also be early learning music, fresh music, emerging, developing music, and we need to be able to move at least one piece every 3 months into mastery. And that will take a lot of hard work, often from the student really committing. I think the hardest thing is to work out how to track your progress. Number 4, I think tracking progress, for me, I do it very simply. I now use digital tools to track my progress, whereas when I was learning, many, many years ago, I was definitely not able to use things like voice memo or easy video recording on my phone. I mean, there's so many ways digitally to now track your progress, but also it could be simple things like tracking how many minutes you did that day. What did you actually do that time? But if you find you spend more time planning or writing about your practice than actually doing it, you need to flip that around. I always think planning is an important part, but make sure you are definitely using your time to get to the instrument. And that cycle of adjusting and adapting and reflecting is something I will regularly do. Okay, now you might have already seen this diagram, so I won't be on for long, but I think this is an important thing to talk about. Most, particularly adult learners in, say, beginner to intermediate, love being in comfort zone. Lessons are there to challenge us, but we need to be able to find that challenge in your own practice time. So if you're always doing the same thing because it feels comfortable and routine, make sure you just spice something up. Do something which is a bit more challenging. Sight reading is the example. Or maybe trying a video that day. Can you video one section of a piece you've been working on? This is how I practice. I'm always aware which zone I'm working in. Am I in discovery, being curious, highly sensory? Or actually, am I in repeating mode? Am I just repeating something because I want to lock it down? I want to really embed it in the body or the ear? Or actually, am I evaluating? All learners generally will move way too quickly to evaluation before they've done discovery and before they've done repetition. So just be aware where you naturally sit. And I think majority of adult learners, particularly because they're really keen and dedicated, will jump way too quickly to evaluation. So just notice what you're saying in your own mind, like that was terrible, or fill in the quote. But we need to make sure that the data is separated from fact, from fiction. Okay, so habits of excellence. Looking at this diagram in your book, could you maybe write down which stage you might need to work on? So for example, are you feeling easy with your body? Do you find it really challenging to play with rhythmic accuracy? That would be 3 to 4. Generally, the more accurate you are with reading music and understanding beat and pulse, you're going to have more energy in your rhythm and then more predictability. Or are you someone who really struggles with tone, making a really resonant, pleasing sound? This habit of excellence diagram I often come to with teacher training, because I find most people jump to number 3 way too quickly. Yet I believe music is all about being easy and expressive. That's my own philosophy. All right, now we're getting into a little diagram. Could you please, on a spare piece of paper, do your quick mud map? It doesn't have to be colored like what I've done, but I would love you to create this. I find it really easy in this way, as in a horizontal map. So let's have a go and work out what the next stage is. And in this little mud map, this is how I think about my practice. And I will generally do this once a month. Now, fundamentals are exactly what Suze was talking about, all your kind of warming up exercises. For me, it might be an open string or a vibrato exercise. It might be a shifting exercise, maybe octave intervals, for example. It could be scales, but actually for me, there's a lot of building blocks before I even launch into a scale. I just want to actually feel good on the instrument and feel with ease. Exercises depending on the level, can be either easy or really super complicated. And you might find that at different times you might be spending a huge amount of chunk in the first two zones, fundamentals and exercises. That's always good, valid work, but it also can feel incredibly boring and like going to the gym with no music. I think it's got to be fun in there. So let's put the fun in fundamentals, okay? And then studies are, of course, where we're really studying a skill, and they should feel a little bit like you're bringing music into your fundamentals, your technique, you're polishing something. It could be a particular bow stroke like staccato or détaché or martelé, or it could be an arpeggio study. And then repertoire is the treat. It's the stuff that really pulls it all together. And I would often work through those zones in different orders. I don't generally always do them in the same way. You can see at the next screen, the mud map, I split those into generally 3 or 4 key objectives and definitely 4 sections maybe in repertoire. I'm not talking necessarily 4 pieces. But, you know, at the end of the day, the most important thing about practicing is giving yourself some rewards. So for a brief moment, just think a little bit about how you motivate yourself. I definitely reward myself with gifts. And when I was really struggling with practicing, particularly when I gave up my first full-time orchestral job, I was like, right, practicing and not getting paid to do it. Because of course, that's what you get paid to do in an orchestra. You actually get paid to turn up to work. Someone's accountable. You don't get paid unless you show up. And I was like, I need to actually pay myself to practice. So I actually have a separate account, which I put money in every week according to how much I practiced. And I tell you what, that's really helped me get motivated to practice. So think about a reward system. And I don't believe all adults want stickers. And then, of course, the mood metric for me, another thing I track is my mood. So at the top on the left, you'll see I'm always noticing my emotional response. It's not just what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, it's why. It's such a pivotal part of the purpose for me. And very importantly, I do track time. I need to know how many minutes I'm either wasting or spending well. And of course, practice doesn't really kick in without an inspiring goal or an objective to do it. So inspiration, the little light bulb, is probably pivotal for me. I have to be inspired to do a big project and lots of work. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about tools for musicians. I find most of my lessons are basically helping a student, particularly a teenage student, or an adult student, take things from chaos to order. Actually, it can be the other way around, depending on who it is. Because I tend to find my brain will often want to unpack things pretty quickly. And then the problem is once you've unpacked things, even in your own practice time, you've got to be able to kind of bundle them back up again. So any teacher would understand this. When we've kind of start to deepen the work and we start to unpack a problem, often other problems start to fall out as well. And so we can only do so much in a 30-minute practice or a 30-minute lesson. So I think this is all about trying to understand processes, toolkits for practicing. What tactic am I using? And reading, obviously, books on practice, there's thousands of them, can actually give you a bit of inspiration too. I really love recording my video practice tracker, and I keep a very clear archived folder separately so I can jump back in and see what I'm doing. That's essential for me because it's how I review, and very importantly, I have accountability that way. Let's talk a little bit about digital tools. I put my actual practice in my diary in a big color. I use red, and I often will underestimate how little time I have in a week to practice. But I try and get at least the same time, 5 days a week minimum. And then if I can get 20-minute blocks around that, great. I'm often very happy if a student doesn't turn up because I'll use a lesson for an actual practice block, which is brilliant. And so a little quick thing for you to do is, can you find 3 words to sum up your current practice. So for example, is it chaotic, sporadic, and inconsistent? But maybe find 3 words that can sum up your current practice with your instrument. Another thing you could think about is how we're using digital tools, because I'd love to move us as a community into that spot. So we'll have that a bit of a chat at the end of this session. Okay, so I find as a teacher, of course, I'm doing every age from the age of 6 generally through to 86. So I find digital planning will work very differently for different ages. As an adult learner, you're such an advantage because you are really able to be totally autonomous in that, and you have so many devices at your fingertips. Whereas often with particularly teenage students, there's often lots of restrictions around that, and parents don't obviously want kids on iPads the whole day. And of course, when you're dealing with a 6-year-old, most parents do not want children to be on an iPad. But I think we can still find ways to support them, and often we have to do that with supervision and with care. Okay, analog tools. The best thing I've done for my practice when I've been really stuck is creating a mood board or a vision board. I used to do it actually as part of the program. I used to get all adult beginners to create a mood board, digital or analog, where they kind of put all their heroes of music up there, including maybe cellists they really admire. It could maybe even be a pin of beautiful, even like concert clothes they want to wear. It could be, oh, I love this idea of playing in this concert hall, or it could be this piece of music you want to play. But you need an inspiring vision board to really kind of keep you connected to your practice. And I've also had an adult student do the most beautiful thing, which was do a photo shoot with their cello, just because they wanted to feel like a cellist. And then they had it professionally framed, and it's in their music room, which I think is a gorgeous way of treating yourself. Think about a professional shoot. Oh my gosh. Now let's talk about some case studies here. I think analog planning, adult learners generally plan too much, practice too little. So don't just plan, let's get the practice happening. And also when you're practicing, you're kind of evolving and planning your practice as you do it. So keep a notebook there, or a digital note-taking device. Often I might even speak into my voice memos with ideas that are coming up for you. I think aspiring musicians are really hard to teach because generally they're already in a very set track, and they often are very much in a set way. And they have the hardest amount of time, like time commitments is huge for them. And often their progress is very minimum because they're already at a very high level, and they are really polishing incredible fine nuances. So often they can struggle with lack of motivation because it could be maybe 8 months to build a recital program. And of course, a young starter, all they want is lots of fun. And very importantly, a hard thing with them is keeping the parents' expectations down. Because often we're so busy, as you can see in that picture, dealing with all the other things, we don't get time to actually note take. So if a parent is in the room, I make them do the notes. I often also get the little kids to write their own little sticker notes too. Sticky notes, by the way, are great for putting on your music, as these are the 3 things I've found in my practice that help me. Okay, how do you use planners as part of your creative practice? So I'd be curious, as a little chat at the end of this, what you use as a community. I will be basically blending both. I'm a bit of a hybrid. I find if I don't write it down, I don't remember it, but that could be because my brain's work that way. And I'd be really interested in what your process is for blocking out your practice. Oh, look, there's me, age 12. Oh my gosh, thank God I don't have those bangs anymore. And look at that 80s mustard jumper. Holy moly. Amazing. Now, I was so in love with cello at this point. And I think what's interesting about this is I didn't have any idea where learning an instrument was going to take me. In fact, if someone said to me, what's your goals with music? I wouldn't have been able to say anything except I just love it. It feels so good. I enjoy the sound. It was very immediate, and I really wasn't doing any long-term thinking. And it wasn't until my teacher at the time, Daisy, said, right, you're so quick at what you're doing, you're tracking so quickly, because remember I had piano and singing as a background, and recorder. Oh my gosh, what an amazing instrument. I was so excited about it that I didn't really want to think too far ahead. I also didn't get scared about performing. In fact, the better I've got, the more scared I've got. So I think what's important about this image is me remembering the joy and just the absolute delight of learning something. So every lesson was like a complete discovery. And she was an exceptional teacher. She was able to really balance both the inspiration, a lot of metaphors. We used to read poetry, for example. We used to listen to music. I even had to pick costumes to create characters. And that's kind of where I think my performing spirit came from. But I think you've got to also get clear on your own story. When you are talking to people about learning the cello or playing the cello, just notice what it is that you're talking about, because actually that's going to give you a clue of your purpose. My purpose is my purpose, but you have to find your purpose. And if you find it's all kind of quite businessy and quite office and academic, maybe you've got to find the love, because without the love, we're not going to keep going. And of course, all those little kind of questions on the side are things you can kind of think about. I will be sharing the slide deck at the end. So really, I think this is a simple framework for me, an approach, if you like, for helping anybody with practice. I think what you've got to look at there is there anything that maybe you might need to focus on? I find, of course, everyone has a different learning style. If anybody was like a fly on the wall in my practice day, I think they'd be quite surprised at how flexible my teaching is in terms of every single lesson is completely different. And I think that's also fascinating for me, that I've been able to stretch myself in that way. Okay, what can you do to challenge yourself? So what you're going to do is right now, write a pledge. Is there something you could do to really challenge yourself? These are 3 examples. And what I think is interesting is students retain 95% of a message when they watch it live or in a video. Whoa, compared to 10%. I didn't actually know that stat, but that totally makes sense to me when I think about me training as a young musician. If I didn't have a professional artist next to me showing me, I don't think I would have picked it up. So I used a lot of, observation to really help me learn. Monkey see, monkey do is an old kind of adage we use in music teaching. So write something now, what you're going to share at the end of this Zoom, about what you can do to challenge yourself. You don't obviously have to go onto Instagram Live yet, but you could at least do a video practice diary or even join a 100 days practice challenge. Okay, so I think what you now need to think about is yourself as a project. I often work my practice into more projects. I chunk them down. Practice has been there all my life, but actually I'm much better at thinking projects. So for example, one of my big goals at the moment is to actually get an EP out of my own original music. Now, I've written that down as a goal for the last 5 years and I still haven't done it. So that is my biggest challenge, backing my own artistry and making the time, and very importantly, finding the funding to pay for it. But it's important. If I don't do it now, I'm 50, I'm never going to do it. So what is your project? What is the thing that's going to really push you through and keep you burning and keep you wanting to kind of keep learning? And of course, social media, I have mixed opinions on social media. It can be a total time drain. I found a lot of my students struggle now because there's one more thing in their day. But with the Facebook community group, I want you to know it's a very real group. There's all real humans in there who all play the cello and are all gunning for you. I'm trying to find ways to keep you all connected and engaged. And you just need to work out how you want to connect. And of course, for me, having so many people spread across Australia, this is the best way for a group multi-level environment. I'm also open to other things. I think the best way for you to keep growing is practice buddies. Let's find some more buddy sessions, keep connecting, because the social engagement is a massive motivator. It is still for me as a musician. I get so excited about rehearsals with other people. It's so boring playing on your own the whole time. So you need to have people who will play with you. And one little troubleshoot with online is you could just have, say, an 8 a.m. practice session on Zoom every Monday, and you all drop into that Zoom meeting, you have a quick chat, you turn your video off or even your mute, both is fine, but you stay on the call. It creates this accountability of someone there. And if you need some help, you can kind of unmute and go, hey, I'm stuck with this. Well, how would you practice it? I always believe more brains are better than one. So if you haven't got a buddy yet to practice with, find one. And then reach out. That's me. I'm now going to come off that and back into Zoom. Stopping share. And there we go. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Are we back into the little Zoomy thing? Here we go. You can see me. Right. That was a lot. Who would like to go first?
Okay, I will.
Go for it, Suze.
Yeah, why not? I mean, on the most beginnery one. I know something that really resonated for me, what you said there, was to treat treat each session, each practice session as a discovery.
Yeah.
Play.
And if you think about how a kid opens a new toy, they certainly don't read the instruction book.
No.
Right? They're trying things, discovering things. And if you think about my very first cello lesson, it was open the case, work it out. And then Daisy popped off to make a cup of tea. So I was left alone with an instrument I'd never even seen it being played. All of you guys know what it looks like because we now have YouTube and you've seen cellists play. But I was this kid going, okay, I've heard the sound on the radio. I don't know what this does. So I was just exploring. Oh, there's an end pin. Oh, I wonder what that does. I must go on the ground. So you start making this stuff up. And then, of course, the second lesson was about, can you find two interesting sounds that are curious and can you make a story about them? So I found a squeaky sound at the end, which is across the bridge where the bow, and I made a story about a pirate ship. You know, so again, I was at that age, but I find that most adults don't play. And if you kind of think everything's very serious and you've got to kind of do a checklist and all that, it's very work focused. And that's really good to be efficient, but you've got to get that balance as well. So I think the duality really helps. If I find I'm getting very down in my mood, I need to instantly find a way to pop myself back up. So I'll find little playful things to do. And often that's just standing up, jiggling all the jiggles out, maybe putting some music on and then coming back in. Because the brain can only do so much. It can just get saturated, right? So yes, play is essential. I remind myself tomorrow. I'm actually quite excited about practicing now because this is helping me. Thanks, Suze. Anything else? Anything? It could be something you resonated with or maybe something out of those questions we were writing down you might want to share. Who wants to jump in? Oh, Karen.
I was using a practice app and I aren't using it anymore. But I had on it a list of each of my pieces and I just set myself the goal of playing each one like 5 minutes or something. And at that time is probably when I was making the most progress. And even though I was only doing 5 minutes on a piece, because I was doing it every day, I was actually achieving a lot more than I am now.
Because you see, one of your values is consistency. And you are remarkably consistent if you think about it.
Yeah, once I start, I'm...
Yeah. And you have what I call grit. So once you've made a decision, you're going to do something, you generally do it. And
Oh,
you're
yeah.
actually not concerned about the timeline. You're not someone who's concerned if a curveball happens. You always come back. You drift off maybe because
Yeah.
that's what life is like, and then you
Yeah.
come back, right?
Very
And I
much.
think actually that's what music training does. It gives us that focus and also that permission to go off on a little adventure over there. It's a bit
Yeah.
like, you know, when you go on holiday and you have like a touring thing. I'm not good with tour parties, you know. There's some people who go to the front and like, I need to be the person there with the tour guide with the umbrella, whereas I'd be like at the back wandering off and creating my own little tour. And I'm also that really naughty person, probably because I found something even more interesting over there. And then everyone starts to come to my tour. You know what I mean? That's my practice.
Yeah.
So I have to bring my brain back from, okay, we're not meant to go over there. That rabbit hole is not meant to be discovered. Let's bring us back in. That's what we're meant to do. So I literally have to pop
Yeah.
myself back out, which is why I use a timer. So if I know I have a hyperfixation happening, I put the timer on because I'm someone who can go, oh, let's just try that again. Oh, and again. Oh, and again. And I'm like, oh, hang on. Why am I doing this again? Oh, yeah, evaluation. Kick myself out of that, go back into discovery. So much about practicing is also knowing yourself, what all of
Yeah.
your tendencies can be, and also letting you're human. Everyone's human. We have to know that actually that's the spice of practice. We all will find our own rhythm with it, our own cadence with it. But for you, you value consistency. But
Mm.
it's also because of your profession. Obviously, you know, this is what you teach every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
also for
exactly.
you, let's use a case study. You still commit to a lesson because you know that it's still forced practice. Even if you
Yeah.
haven't necessarily done as much practice, you don't do the guilt trip thing. You
No,
go,
I
I'm
turn up
still,
regardless.
yes, because then we still go, oh, okay, there's still things we can learn. So a
Yeah.
lot of adult students, particularly if they've not had music training, think lessons are about showing or being performative to a teacher.
Hmm.
Total nonsense.
Yep.
Lessons are about having someone who's helping you understand this creative practice, often maybe pulling your brain in a different way, unpacking, well, this is how I would practice it. Have you tried that? Problems, solutions, and also probably presenting maybe more of an inspiring way to approach it. And I think you do this very well with your students, and it's always been a gift of my teaching to be able to teach teachers. So I'm really grateful that you're part of the program. But it also means
I think,
I have to lift my game because I'm like, actually, I can't totally like bullshit this woman. She actually really doesn't know what she's talking about. And that's
but it's
really good.
also, if you haven't practiced and you still attend your lesson, it remotivates you.
But it's also confirming, right?
It is,
It's
Yeah.
validating everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
This is where we were last time. This is what
Yeah.
we're working on. This is what we're aspiring to. And if you think about any practice or any lesson, we're in those 3 time zones constantly:
Mm.
past, present, future. And we are
Yep.
just constantly moving between those 3 spaces of what did we do last time? What am I doing right now? Where am I aspiring to be in, say, 20 minutes, in 20 years? It's up to you what that timeline looks like. But
Yep.
I think turn up, show up. It's basically the first thing. Once you do that,
Yeah.
you're already on a win.
Because you're going to learn something.
Absolutely. And you're hopefully going to have a bit of fun
Yeah.
and get rid of the guilt.
And
That's
it's
got to
me
go with
time.
pace. Yeah, me
In
time.
all my busyness, it's
Yeah.
about me.
Yeah.
And like I just have blinkers on. Sorry, but that's cello. And nothing will get in the way.
Yeah. And
So
you've always been remarkable like that. If there's one
yeah,
person I was worrying about going, oh, I want to learn the cello, thinking, gosh, you're so busy. How are you going to find the time? But you do. You
you
make it
make
happen.
time.
Yeah.
My principal at my school, when I was a kid, I was at Clayfield College. She always said, if you want something done, ask a busy person.
Correct.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those people who have a wash of time right now, not looking at anyone in particular, just see if you can create a container for your practice and just be consistent. Try it for 5 days. Can I do the same thing for 5 days in a row? How did I feel at the end of that? It doesn't have to be a 100-day practice challenge. Let's do a 5-day practice challenge. Let's break it down and make it easy. Yeah. I would be really curious to talk to, we haven't introduced yet Rochelle to the group. We did a check-in before. Hi, Rochelle. Would you like to
Hello.
say hello and maybe how you feel about practice at the moment and
Yes.
what
Well,
that
first
looks
of all,
like?
Suze, I'm the most beginnery beginner. Literally, I have to take that humble crown as I've had 2 lessons now.
But don't you think it's
Um,
gorgeous that you just said humble crown?
yeah.
Maybe you should have those in class.
Yes, a glorious crown.
A
Because I
cello
do feel
crown.
very honoured and delighted to be coming to this practice of cello finally. Um,
And notice those words, guys, delighted and honoured. So there's already a reverence and very importantly, awe.
mm,
Uh,
it's
and a
it's
deep in very deep intention for you, isn't it, Rochelle?
yes, it is. I'm just full of joy at this. And a lot of the language and things that you're using at the moment is foreign to me.
Mm.
But what I've noticed over the last 2 lessons is how much I've actually learned and how much I have actually absorbed. And that, if anything, has given me even more hope and inspiration because I was sort of thinking, oh, as I've said to you, Louise, I'm too old. What am I thinking doing this at this age? I'll never get it. I'm like, no, look what you've already learned in 2 lessons. Wow.
And
And how
also
to
look
hold
how
your
open you
bow.
are to that, right? So
Yeah,
you're coming with it with an open heart, very
yeah,
motivated already. You've got a very clear
yeah,
purpose in your head. And of course,
yeah,
we need to just remove the what does this look like specific. Yeah. Remember to
yes,
keep in the joy space, the
yeah.
sensory, the touching, the feeling. Gosh, I actually smell my cello because my cello
Ah,
smells beautiful. I don't know if anybody
yeah.
else does that, but it smells. It's got like if an
Um,
instrument has a smell, my bow smells, and I can often be,
mm,
oh, this feels good. So the sensory is
mm,
important to build in.
mm,
And often when I'm feeling too overwhelmed or tired, like I was today in a practice, I got so frustrated with where I was at. Because again, my goal is Sunday, I've got to be up on stage, right? Performance anxiety kicking in for me, Rochelle. And so I just did, remember we did the cello hug in your
yes,
lesson? And I just sat and
yeah,
I just was just rocking from side to side
yeah,
and just even just holding and embracing the instrument, I could feel
yeah,
everything soften. And then when my physicality softened and I went back into the cello, I was like, oh, that was so much easier because I was building it up in my own
yeah.
head as something that was hard. And so my body became stiff, you know?
Something that I loved was, the concept that it's always in touch with your heart and obviously
Yeah.
your left leg, but just that
Yeah.
that thought of that sensory kind of, oh, it's part of me and I'm
Yeah.
part of it, and we're in that dance of music together.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and from a sensory perspective, I don't know why, but there is that little hollow in the bow that my thumb pad just loves.
Ah, so
And
it's actually
I'm
feeling ease, comfort.
Yeah, I'm very sensory with like sensations and
Mm.
like certain crystals I'll rub and I love the feeling of it. And there's this little spot on the bow that I'm like, ah, love that.
Yeah. But I've also been known to even eat the rosin, just so you know.
Oh God. Well, I haven't got to that point yet. If I do, let me know. There's people that can help me.
But
But
it still fascinates me how every cell of my body adores an object. But if you think about it, it's because I know what this object can do. So for
yeah,
me, it's like the bow is my arm, literally.
yeah,
The bow is my breath. The
yeah.
bow is my soul.
I love that,
The bow
Louise.
is like my artist. It's like what a painter must feel like with a
Yeah.
beautiful palette of colors. I mean, that's what my bow feels like. In fact, if I lost my bow, I would be devastated. The cello, remember, doesn't make the sound, the bow arm does.
Mm,
So the left hand for me is more functional. It's just functioning, just
yeah.
finding notes. But the best thing about the left hand, which many of you always talk about aspiring to do, is vibrato. And when you get that vibrato happening, all of a sudden, all these black and white notes on a page become colorful, gorgeous
Mm.
shades. Yeah.
I
And
think
they
what's
become thick,
interesting.
sludgy blue, or they might become like this beautiful turquoise. Yeah. So that's the
Yeah,
art in the making, where for
it's
me,
beautiful.
sound isn't
Mm,
what I'm reading, it's just the way in. And I
yeah,
often think when we print music so boringly, we actually don't bring in the whole colorful imagination. And every time I play anything, there's a story behind it. There's a real reason for the sound, and I definitely connect my inner singing voice. How
yeah.
many of us sing here? I think singing is essential. I know Christina is
I
joined a
make up my own
choir.
notes to
Chris,
songs. Does
I
that
think,
count?
yeah. And thanks, Rochelle, for jumping in. Is there anything you
Thank
wanted
you.
to add to that before I move to Christina? She's going to
Um,
share a little bit about what she's
just
learning
that
in the
I've been
choir.
listening to Monique Claire since you told me about her yesterday. Oh my goodness, how wonderful. And
Fantastic.
watching her videos and seeing how she moves with the cello and sings at the same time, I'm like in awe. So beautiful.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Oh, it's a pleasure. That's what our job is, to kind of steer you into finding people that can inspire you. Yeah. So, Christina, would you like to share a little bit about your new adventure with choir?
Yes, I have joined the local Heart Song Choir, and accidentally, it's probably just what you would have recommended for me, in that we have no music. Uh, We're meant to be singing from the heart, and of course, I rely on reading the music, and so I find it quite challenging. Um, but I'm starting to relax and get a little bit of a feel for what is going on. So they're a lovely group.
So, that feels a little bit like learning music in the dark, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But actually, that's a really nice way to play. I'm wondering if Karen Eastman ever plays in the dark. Do you ever turn off lights and just build a sensory feeling of the instrument in the total
No,
dark?
no.
Ah, yeah, that's often one of my big practices I do before I get up on stage. It helps me really focus in to the feeling of the instrument. So when I get scared, I find everything is not about what I'm feeling, sensory, touch. It's more about what I'm thinking. So I need to move the into feeling. And the way I really build that before a big performance is play in the dark. The last practice I do before I go on stage. And then I also do a vision practice where I literally walk through the entire concert program from the
Mm.
moment I start even going into the green room. I literally imagine the entire thing. And I will literally do that in like meditation pose. And we know from sport that this is exactly what high performing athletes do. They vision a race or whatever it is that they're doing, competing. Classical musicians have to do the same thing. And particularly when I'm
Mm.
preparing for a concerto or something big, lots of memory, 40 minutes on stage, high pressure environment. I need to make sure I've done lots of those vision pieces before I kind of practices, I should say, before I finally get
So
up
we
on
might
stage.
call that in vivo exposure in
You see what I
psychology.
love about these? I always learn so much from my students. Help us understand what you said, and I'm going to write it down.
So when someone experiences a fear or a phobia, um, it's kind of gold standard to expose them to the fear in a
Oh,
safe way. Um, so you might start off just talking about it, but eventually you'll build up through a hierarchy to them doing it. And so one of those steps on the hierarchy is imagining it. And so we sit down, as you say, in a meditative state, and we talk. So if it was a performer, I might ask them to give me the program, and I'd say, and now, the MC has introduced you. What are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you managing those
mm-hmm.
feelings? And we go through the whole thing so they feel comfortable.
So actually, this could be very useful for those adult students who constantly reschedule their lessons because they're actually having performance anxiety about turning up. Yeah?
Yeah, yeah,
That was something we could talk about
yeah.
to help me in my own practice. But I think that sense of fear is very real, right? We all feel it, even just turning up to a lesson or a class or a different environment. So I need to be mindful of that, I think. I'm wondering how Leonie manages all of the things that she's doing. Leonie, is there anything? Thank you so much for your contributions there, Christina. Leonie, is there anything you'd like to add? And I'd be curious, Leonie, if you do anything to track your practice, because remember you were talking about you're overwhelmed with too much to do. So how are you organizing or tracking?
In the last 6 months, I've joined a practice app.
Tell
and
us, which one have you joined? There's quite a few.
Tonic.
Say that again.
I set myself a 4-day-a-week thing.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I didn't catch that, Leonie.
I booked in for 4 days a week as to set myself.
Right.
But I practice every day. I've got a 160-day streak.
Whoa.
But it's not all cello.
But why is that a bad thing? You're still practicing music.
Because I play piano as well.
But I think that's still music, it's still creative.
Yes, but I think what I'm going to do is set myself to make sure that I play cello every day. They had a challenge one week and I wanted to be top 10.
So are you competitive, Leonie?
I got blisters on my fingers. I had to do pizzicato because it was after 10 p.m. I did pizzicato for the Bach suites and I got a blister on my pizzi finger.
Wow.
But I improved so much. So I really want to continue with the daily cello.
So actually, can I check that is Tonic app?
Yeah.
Tonic. Yeah, Tonic app. Is that the one that Ray runs?
Yes, Julia's on there.
Yeah, I thought she was as well. And she also, because she's so fabulously ADHD like me, she also requires streaking like that. She has to have that tracking
I do
mechanism.
too, obviously.
Yeah. Otherwise
and just being able to listen to people practice like her has taught me so much.
Yeah.
Just the repetition of being exact and, not feeling embarrassed about having to perform, just to do it.
Yeah, great. Well, that's really good feedback. So guys, check out Tonic app. Is there any other apps, any other little apps or little practice tools we're using just to close? Anyone's allowed to jump in?
Tomplay.
Tomplay. Tell us why you like Tomplay so much, Suze.
Well, again, as somebody with no musical background, I mean, other than enjoying music, which, I'm learning to tap into, that doesn't mean I haven't had a musical background, if that makes sense. I just find it really helps me with the rhythm, and I enjoy how it allows me to pace, slow down the tempo. I know I play with a metronome, but that starts to get annoying. So I really enjoy that I can do it. And also what I'm enjoying with Tomplay too is that it helps me, it doesn't let me move on till it's told me I've hit the note. So it's giving me some of that muscle memory as well.
Yeah, great.
So, but I'm not overplaying it because I'm aware too, you don't want to build a dependency with something like that. But I am enjoying it.
But I suppose you can obviously change the volume. And of course, with Tomplay, depending on the track you're playing, you can either take the cello out to play along totally and just have the backing track, which is very similar. It's basically replaced what most traditional music lessons would be, where either a teacher would play in student-teacher duet form, or where there might be a teacher who plays piano, which I do. Not every teacher now does, but it just gives you an opportunity to make music in a lesson. On the same challenge with Tomplay is that actually you're not listening to yourself all the time. So if you are using Tomplay a lot, just be mindful that you still need to be able to be fiercely independent. So you can really listen for refining tone, intonation, because sometimes you can kind of disguise all of that with a beautiful, fabulous backing track. So yeah, always worth checking that things are accurate. You're either in tune or you're out of tune, in time or out of time. Those things are totally fact. Yeah. Is there any other fabulous app we'd like to share before we close? No? Karen, what do you use for your helping your students track their own practice? I know you've done a few things. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I've quit doing it because none of them were using it. but
And so there's the thing, you know, we experiment as teachers. We think this is going to be a great idea. We give it a go.
Oh, absolutely. And it was costing like $30 a month. And it was like, well, if none of you even open it.
So do you think that was possibly because they needed to be brought along the education piece, didn't know how to use it? Or was it because parents didn't want to pay for it? Or I think
it's because they don't practice.
Oh, there you go.
Which is like what all this is about. It's
yeah.
And like the one I was using, I can't even remember what it was called now, but you type in the list of the pieces and then they could tick off each day when they practiced them. And I'm a list person, so I loved it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, even just having sticky notes, checklist of things you're doing that day is useful. So you need to find ways to be flexible and sometimes mix them around as well. But thanks for sharing that. Look, this is a constant, I suppose, process for all of us as musicians, regardless of the level. And what you need to know is, ironically, this was the most popular session in the whole of the Ulster National Conference last year in Sydney. They gave me a pokey old wardrobe space of maybe 10 people, and then I had over 400 delegates come, and they had to quickly move me into a really big space. And they had not anticipated how the entire conference of excellent teaching, all of us were like, we struggle. And the most common thing we're finding in Australia right now is time. Literally massive expectations from schools and often paying parents. And kids are just not getting to the instrument. And so we need to be very mindful of, I think, that consistency piece and also reducing the workload. I've always believed quality over quantity. So on that note, we're finishing. Quality over quantity, always. Have a wonderful evening. Gorgeous to see so many of you here. Thank you all so much for your fabulous contributions, and I will do a short little edited version of some chunky bits for tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of it. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye. Good